Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished and successful author who spent a lot of time in the corporate world from San Francisco, USA, Mr. Richard Moran. Richard, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. I'm excited to be here and
Thank you.
tell some stories.
Thank you. Richard is an author of a book titled The Accidental Vineyard, an Old House, New Vines, and a Changed Life in Wine Country. So, Richard, well, we're going to speak about your book, but a few questions for you before we come to your book. You have operated at the highest levels of corporate leadership. What internal signals told you something was missing in that life?
Well, there are several things to talk about on this. The first is I was conflicted. I liked both parts of my life. And for anybody who's ever been in consulting or at the highest level, that it attracts you in. It's hard to let go.
Absolutely.
And in consulting, one of the things that happens is you become a hero.
Mm.
If organizations could figure out some of their issues by themselves, they wouldn't need a consultant. So you're a hero. But all of a sudden, I realized that I was saying many of the same things over and over. And there was no big day of enlightenment. It was more of like a feeling that it had run its course.
Mhm.
I had nothing more that I could bring to the party.
Mm.
So that's when I said, maybe it's time for me to step aside and listen to my internal voices. And there was also a time where one day as everybody knows, consulting is full of travel.
Yeah.
And one day I was packing my suitcase, and the sound of the zipper closing on my suitcase made my daughter cry.
Mm.
I thought, oh boy, I'm missing something here. So I said, we're gonna start to change this life.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Thank you. If you compare success before and after this transition, how has your definition fundamentally changed?
Well, success is, I'm going to take a step back, Ash. All successful leaders are very self-aware. If you show me a successful leader, I will show you a man or woman who understands themselves in their heart of hearts. They know themselves.
Mm.
And I reached a point where I didn't have anything left to prove. So that was when I said, maybe it's time for me to start doing something else.
Mm.
And that something else became restoring an old house and developing a vineyard. And I will tell the truth that at first I missed it. There was, it's very heady flying around the world, including to India, to consult and talk to leaders.
Mm.
And all of a sudden I felt like, wow, I'm not flying anywhere this week. What's wrong with me?
Mm.
And it was a transition.
I
And
can
I
imagine.
probably am still going through that transition.
Mm. What an amazing story. Let's come to your book now, Richard, The Accidental Vineyard. Tell me about your book and the moment when you first saw the house, and
Mhm.
what did you feel more strongly? Fear, excitement, or irrational conviction? What made you say
I
yes?
felt I felt all of those things,
Mhm.
Ash. But have you ever been in love with someone or something that you just know you shouldn't be, but it just keeps on attracting you? And
Mhm.
this house was like that. I should mention also that The Accidental Vineyard is my 11th book. The first 10 were all about business. It was about how to be successful, how to be a good manager, how to work within organizations and win. So this was a real transition for me to write something so personal, which is about the conflict that I had being both a successful executive entrepreneur as well as working in the vineyard. And
Mm.
there was a moment where I was on a conference call in the vineyard while I was clipping grapevines, click, 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 click. And while I was on the call with a world-known executive, he said, "What is that noise that I keep on hearing? Is it a bad connection?" And in fact, it was me clipping the grapes, click, click, click.
Mm,
And that was when I said, I should, I should, I should change this. But buying an old house and restoring it and developing a vineyard was not only a challenge, but it was something that the challenge just attracted me, and I wanted to do this in the biggest way. And it was also a project that could include my family. If I
mm,
wanted to be a successful golfer, that was not going to include my family. Working in the house, working in the vineyard was a project I knew that my wife and I could do together and include all four of our children.
wow. And the house that you are sitting in right now, that is the famous house, is it?
It is
Oh,
built in
wonderful.
1870. It was
Mm,
built in 1870, and it had been left for it was in bad shape. In fact, they thought about parting out the house like an old BMW.
mm,
The instead of uh, you know selling the house, they thought about selling the doorknobs and the doors and the floorboards, which would have been just a tragedy. So in many ways, we feel like we saved the house, and
mm,
that's a big part of the story of the book.
amazing. Restoring a 19th century home is as much emotional as physical. What did the house teach you about patience?
Well, when we first bought the house, we decided that we were going to take our time. Part of it was I couldn't afford to redo it all at once, so we took our time. The patience that I had was I wanted the house to be beautiful. I wanted it to look like it could be in a magazine. But instead, in the early days, what we needed to do is do all the things that no one ever notices, like put in a new foundation.
Mm,
No one ever, that's like buying a muffler on your
yeah.
car. No one ever notices a muffler.
Mm,
A new foundation in the house is like that. So it needed a new foundation. It also needed an entire new electrical system
mm,
because when we bought the house, if we turned on a toaster and a light at the same time, they would both dim.
mm,
So it has a new electrical system, a new plumbing system, a new furnace, all those things people don't notice. So I had to be really patient that
yeah.
people came and said, "Well, what have you done?" And they'd look around and say, "It still looks bad."
Mm,
But it wasn't bad. It was just me. It was me trying to be patient with all the very expensive things that needed to be done in the beginning. And it was a project. I mean, what I learned the most in this whole process, Ash,
mm,
was how to be a better project manager. I
right.
thought I was a good project manager, and this house taught me I was I was not as good as I thought. There
Amazing.
was humility.
Yeah.
Humility was part of the process.
Fascinating. Did you ever feel the house had a personality or a history that guided your decisions?
Yes. Well, first thing we did, we researched the house quite extensively because I didn't want to buy a house that was a scene of a massacre at one point or something bad that happened in the 19th century. So so we looked at that carefully, and then the house does speak to us all the time. Part of it is the creaks and the moans that it makes all night, but part of it also is it talks to us in ways of saying, You saved me. This is your heritage is going to be part of your heritage anyway. Is going to be this house and how you documented it,
Mm,
and of course we still own it and we're proud of it, and we get visitors all the time,
mm,
and that's a real source of pride.
mm.
But it
Wow.
still talks to us, and we're trying to figure out if it's a man or a woman. We think it's a woman that is so happy to be brought back to being handsome.
Amazing. In hindsight, what is the biggest naive assumption you made at the start when you acquired the house?
The the big naive assumption I made was that I could do a lot of the work myself.
Okay.
I know how to use a hammer,
Yeah.
and sometimes everything is a nail.
Mm,
Sometimes everything you can treat like a nail, but not in an old house. So many of the things that needed to be done were just beyond my capabilities. And
mm,
as I brought in craftsmen to fix
mm,
things, um, then I realized that there are, in fact, it applies not only in restoration, but it applies in the real world. Bring
Mm,
in the skilled people because it will be cheaper and better in the long run.
mm,
And I always said in consulting, I always commented when something needed, when a project needed to be staffed, my main comment was availability is not a skill. And in this case, the craftspeople that were available were not necessarily the best ones that were going to help me. And I
mm,
learned that the hard way through beekeepers and exterminators and lots of other people
mm,
that low price was not necessarily first on my mind.
amazing. You also have a vineyard attached to your house, and the next few questions are about grapes.
Mhm.
I'm assuming you didn't have any background in growing grapes and making wine, but what surprised you the most about discipline and unpredictability of growing grapes?
Yeah. Well, I never anticipated. My lifelong dream was not to develop a vineyard
Mm,
or develop a winery, although I like wine. We're surrounded by vineyards.
mm,
Our property, which is 12 acres, is surrounded by a 600-acre vineyard. And I saw, I was fascinated by the process and the project. Once again, I thought I was a good project manager. But one of the things that I learned about growing food in general is the variability, the weather, the heat, everything makes a difference. So even though every year our wine comes from the same vines, every year it's different
hmm.
because the weather is different
Yeah.
and the grapes are a different age and the day that they're crushed is different. So it's just it's a challenge, the unpredictability in and the variability in
Mm,
wine growing.
mm,
I also, but one thing I learned, and I love this part of it, is at the end of the season, I can hold a bottle of wine and we produce something. There's a thing, there's a product. And much of my consulting was in technology. And at the end of the day, what comes out of Google or Oracle at the back door, there's not something that you can hold.
mm,
And I liked that feeling of holding something that we made. We made it.
Amazing. What failures in the vineyard taught you lessons that corporate life never could?
Well, that's a great question, Ash. There was no, as all of your listeners will know, in the corporate life, you can sort of fudge sometimes. You can fib, you can take a little time off, you can leave early, get in late, you can do you can fudge a little bit, I guess is a good way to describe it.
Mm,
When the grapes are ready to be picked, you can't say, okay, well, I don't feel good today, so I'm not going in. They have to be picked.
mm,
And your crew is ready and
yeah.
everything is synchronized. And so there was no room for, well, there's no room for failure in either very much. But there's a little bit more of a gray area
Mm,
in the corporate world that
mm.
we all know about. And part of that is what makes it interesting.
Interesting. How did this experience reshape your relationships within your own family?
Well, there still are days where things need to be done and and no one helps. And there are days where lots of people are around and lots of people help.
Yeah.
In fact, uh, last last year in December, I bought everybody in the family new work boots. And that was I bought 8 pairs of work boots. And I would say 4 of those are still in the box
Hmm.
for those set of boots. Some
Mm,
people help more than that, and it's a proclivity. Some people just like to get their hands dirty. Some people like to hammer and chop wood. Some people like to read a book and drink wine and watch
yeah.
others.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've learned that certain things like when it comes time to pick the grapes, and at the end of the day, there's a big harvest celebration. Everybody wants to be there for that. But
Mm,
when it's time to prune the grapes, no one wants to do that.
I can imagine. You also use an interesting phrase, which is the menagerie of people and critters. That sounds very vivid. How did community redefine your sense of belonging?
Well, there are two communities. One is that lives around the house and the animals and the wildlife, and most of them were there before we ever bought the house,
Mm.
and they deserve to be a part of it too. Right now, we're dealing with ravens, the big blackbird. The
Yeah.
ravens are they see their reflection in the windows and they're pecking on the glass all the time
Mm.
like this, which drives us crazy. We think somebody's trying to break in the middle of the night.
Mm.
So there's a community of critters, and we live and love with we love not all of them, but most of them.
Hmm.
And then there's a community of the wine world, and people, the neighbors, we don't have a lot of equipment. We're too small to have a $3,000 crusher and stemmer. So the community all gathers and helps each other when it comes to bottling, making the wine, doing all the things that are necessary for
Mm.
to make a good product.
Mm.
And I learned that the first year when we made our wine, I relied on our family a little bit too much and our friends a little bit too much. And as a result, that the wine wasn't that good.
Mm.
The next year, I relied on the community, and the wine was great. So
Amazing.
I've learned that the community is really important
Absolutely.
in all the projects that we have, and it's very very giving. And when I ask for help, sometimes I'm used to when I was in the city, the people would say, "Well, can I come over a week from Tuesday or something?" In the country, it's more like, "How about now? Can we come over now and help
Yeah.
you?" And I
Yeah.
love that.
Fascinating.
Communities can be anywhere. It's not just a wine
I
country thing.
No, no,
It's
absolutely.
everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we are all social human beings, social people. We need our communities. Um, I have three more questions, Richard. How did uncertainty and lack of control ultimately become assets rather than liabilities?
Well, the lack of control is something that someone like me had to get used to because I was used to being able to control things. I
Mm.
could control my schedule. I could control those who were part of the team or control deadlines. I could control projects.
Mm.
And in the wine world, it's not quite as defined. So that is something I probably am still getting used to. And the lack of control on on the production of grapes, we never know exactly how many tons of grapes we're going to get. Depends
Mm.
on what happens during the growing
Yeah.
season.
Yeah.
Right now, they're all budding. They're about to break their buds. But if we get a cold snap here in Northern California, all the buds are going to die. So we're all living with that uncertainty, which takes a minute to get used to.
Correct. Correct. Absolutely. If someone is stuck in a high pressure career today, what is the first small step they can take toward a more meaningful life?
I think one small step that I mentioned earlier, Ash, is about knowing yourself,
Mm.
being very self-aware.
Yeah.
For some people, moving to the country is not at all that's something that they would want to do. For some people, being around their family a lot, that's
Mm.
they don't want to do that either. But I think that part of what the book is about is taking a risk.
Mm.
Taking risks in life are often, or regrets in life are often the things that you choose not to do. I should have married that girl in college. I should have gone to medical school. I should have taken that investment and advice and invested in NVIDIA.
Mm.
But so the regrets are all about the things you didn't do. And I knew right away I would have regretted not not getting involved with
Mm.
this house. So my advice is understand yourself, understand what risks you're willing to take, and then take the risk and see what happens. Because
Mm.
I think things tend, I'm an optimist, but I think things tend to turn out. And I
Mm.
think it relates to the to your show. The
Yeah.
brand called you. If you know your brand and you know what you like, then you're going to be successful.
Great
And stick
response.
to your brand. Stick to your
Yeah.
brand.
Yeah. Yeah. Great response. And my last question for you, Richard. If you had to summarize the philosophy of your book, The Accidental Vineyard, what would it be?
Some of your listeners might be wondering, well, did he really write the book or did he do it with AI? And AI did not write a single word in the book. But I have to admit, I asked AI to summarize my book
Hmm.
and in as just a few sentences. And it did a great job, no surprise.
Yeah.
And here is what the core message is. The core message of the book, at its heart, the book is about cultivating the life you want
Mm,
rather than the one you are supposed to have.
mm,
It serves as an inspirational guide for anyone dreaming of a career pivot or a retreat to a simpler life, emphasizing that some of the best parts of life come from the wrong turns that you take. And
mm.
I can't summarize it better than that. So thank you, AI.
Wonderful. And on that note, Richard, I just want to say what a fabulous conversation this has been. Very powerful message from you about know yourself. And of course, what you said in the end, cultivate the life you want. Thank you for speaking to me about your own journey. Thank you for speaking to me about all the incredible lessons you seem to have learned as you were building this home from 1870, which you recreated, rebuilt, and then immortalized this whole journey in your book, The Accidental Vineyard. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Ash, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.